Hello, I'm Professor Soon-jeong and I'd like to present our study with Dr. Lee Dong-hyun on the impact of learners' metability changes on interpersonal relations with teachers under COVID-19, and it's through a lens of computer-mediated communication. So let me introduce the first part of our research, which is about the background and the purpose of our study. First of all, higher education learners are asked to improve their metability and establish a close relationship with teachers. Such competencies for learners in the university have been traditionally infused in the face-to-face education environment. However, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, a large majority of higher education institutions in South Korea have switched to a full online education mode since early 2020. Before the COVID-19 era, university students have little encountered such a long, dramatic changeover that replaces classroom settings. With an outbreak of COVID-19, many Korean researchers swiftly focused on reporting the practices and trends in distance learning, analyzing the responses to the online education environment around learners, and describing the roles and challenges in technology for the on-tech education services. Distance learning relies on computer-mediated communication. It is difficult for learners to enhance their meta ability, including meta-cognitive, meta-affective, and meta-social ability, and the learner-teacher relationship via CMC during learning and after class. However, few empirical studies have revealed the timely critical issue as teaching and learning have relied on face-to-face communication in the site-based classroom before the COVID-19 crisis. This situation implies that from the learner's perspective, distance educators are required to look into the impact of a full online learning format on meta-ability and interpersonal relations with them. By identifying the knowledge gap in association with the sudden changeover to online education, our study proposes two underlying research questions accordingly. In the COVID-19 situation, our first question is, does a full distance learning method via CMC affect learners' meta-ability? And our second question goes, does changes in meta-ability influence the learner-teacher relations? So this research aims to investigate the impact of changes in learners' meta-ability on interpersonal relations with teachers, as well as to examine the causal relationships across the variables. To do this, we first proposed a conceptual model presenting changes in learners' meta-ability and the learner-teacher relationship based on two CMC-related theories, followed by content analysis on secondary text data in the online forum of Korean University to ensure the relevancy of theoretical variables with the model. We next carry out regression analysis in series on the online survey data to uncover a causal relationship between three set learners' meta-ability and interpersonal relations with teachers. Our study is significant, we think, because it differs from the prior literature in that we investigate the impact of learners' meta-ability changes on interpersonal relations with teachers within the CMC context. Our work in a new theoretical paradigm is valuable for distance educators and practitioners whose research interests include learners' meta-ability, adding a practical significance to the body of knowledge in the CMC arena. Upon the new normal era after the pandemic, it will contribute to finding the alternatives for improving learner social interaction with teachers. And as a second part, I'd like to briefly explain our theoretical background where our research based on. The first theoretical background is on the computer-mediated communication, which is also called CMC. CMC is defined as text, audio, and video changes between individuals through computers and a network connection. It has become an integral form of communication for distance learning and interpersonal relationships. Because of the expansion of CMC, face-to-face instruction has shifted to a distance learning format in higher education. Technologies in the higher education settings on CMC are based on synchronous and asynchronous modes of communications, as well as a mixture of media. Synchronous channels include instant chat rooms, voice over the phones, and real-time video lectures, whereas asynchronous channels cover discussion boards, bulletin boards, social networks, university weblogs, and short messages and emails that are non-interactive, occurring at different times. Educators are interested in improving the relationships between the use of various technologies and students' learning experience and media type on students' expectations, preferences, and satisfaction with the class, as well as reflections from the instructors. Some researchers state that synchronous CMC interaction impacts students' expectations and comfort levels in online courses than asynchronous communication. While there are multiple theoretical approaches to the qualities of CMC, this research focuses on persuasion from two common theoretical perspectives: the media richness theory and the social information processing theory. From the cues filtered out perspective, the MR theory is one of the CMC specific theories. It asserts that various media differ in the number of cue systems inherent within them, and systematic reductions in the non-verbal cues conveyed by different channels lead to interpersonal orientation among CMC users, although CMC media may reduce ambiguity. In addition, when confronted with a persuasive attempt, the presence or absence of nonverbal cues can lead people to engage in cognitively different processes. The MR theory thus proposes that medium differs in richness or the ability of information to change understanding within a time interval. From the interpersonal adaptation perspective, the SIP theory of CMC is a widely used framework to tell differences between face-to-face communication and text-based CMC. It seeks to explain how CMC users may occur relations timely with others online, and the links achieve the level of development that is expected via face-to-face communication. The SIP theory articulates the assumption that communicators are motivated to develop interpersonal impressions and affinity regardless of media types. The theory also argues that nonverbal CMC media operates at a different rate from face-to-face in CMC users' ability, as CMC functions require a longer time to occur at each other user. Beta ability is one of the underlying acquired abilities which plays a significant role in enabling a wider range of academic knowledge and practical skills. The importance of meta-level ability in higher education learners 볼까? Higher education learners has been discussed in the arena of self-motivated learning, self-directed learning, and social skills for specific situations on campus. Meta abilities are necessary for university students in the face-to-face class settings. They mainly include meta-cognitive skills. For example, cognitive competencies about cognition that helps blah 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 blah. 오늘 좀 이리저리 돌려보겠습니다. 이렇게 얘기도 해보고 이렇게 화면을 보면서 얘기도 해보고 자, 이거는 왼쪽을 보면서 얘기를 하는 건데요. 자, 왼쪽 거를 보면서 왼쪽 모니터를 보면서 얘기를 하고 있을 때는 어떻게 보이는지 지금 자세를 바꾸면서 해보고 있습니다. 자, 왼쪽 모니터를 보면서 정면을 주시하면서 얘기하는 것, 그리고 오른쪽 모니터를 보면서 정면을 주시하면서 이야기하는 것, 어느 것이 가장 적절한지 왔다 갔다 하면서 테스트 중입니다. In this slide, I'd like to briefly mention on our research design and method. First of all, on our conceptual framework of our research. Empirical research on changes in meta-ability and the impact on interpersonal relations via CMC has been very limited, and the new conceptual frameworks that may explain any unknown CMC-related phenomenon are necessarily developed more to resolve previous contradictory findings of the effectiveness and utilization of CMC in the context of higher education. So relying on the MR theory and the SIP theory that support theoretical approaches to CMC, meta-ability and interpersonal relations, our study comes up with a conceptual framework shown in this figure underneath. From the learner's perspective, the new framework is designed to explain a causal relationship between changes in meta-ability in three elements: the moderating effect by face-to-face learning experience, and the impact on the learner-teacher relationship via CMC in higher education context. And secondly, I'd like to explain our construct, variables, and hypotheses on this research. In a similar theoretical vein, the constructs and definitions in the threefold of learners' meta-ability changes and the interpersonal relationship with teachers within higher education are also arranged to be used for this study, as shown in this table underneath. Conceptual variables are also employed for data analysis and survey questionnaires. So this empirical study explaining the cause effect between CMA and LTR via CMC adopt a series of quantitative techniques in analyzing data. In line with the research questions, it suggests the following hypotheses that are inspired by the former studies rooted in the MR theory and the SIP theory. So the four different questions, hypotheses we have set for this research is as this. Hypothesis 1 is learners' metacognitive changes via CMC affects the learner-teacher relationship. The second hypothesis is learners' meta-affective changes via CMC affects the learner-teacher relationship. And the next two hypotheses, 3 and 4, also on the learner-teacher relationships. The third one is on the learners' meta-social changes via CMC. And the fourth hypothesis is the learner's prior experience in distance learning mediates the learner-teacher relationships. Now that MC, MA, and MS constructs were confirmed in the S University, according to available sampling, two phases of the online survey involved a total of 207 undergraduate students attending S University, including 102 respondents from 6 majors in December 2020 and 105 respondents from 7 majors in June 2021. Between the students and their multiple instructors, there was a mix of both the synchronous and asynchronous communication channels during the full scale of online education. The electronic survey right after each of 2 semesters was structured with 5 sections consisting of 24 questions in 5-point Likert scales. Our study distributed the same set of questionnaires in 2 rounds of the survey to keep consistency in coding survey data. With advice from academic mentors in communicology, the returned answers from 6 international students were excluded from analysis in light of reliability because the survey in Korean was challenging in nature. The table underneath presents the descriptive statistics relating to the sample of distance learning students via CMC. Of the 207 respondents, the majority were students in literature and social science, consisting 76.8%, and female participants, which includes about 70% of the sampling. And the first and third year students consist about 69%. In particular, 69.6% students were inexperienced in face-to-face class settings for their campus life. To test the given hypothesis that I mentioned earlier, 3 quantitative analyses including reliability analysis, correlation analysis, and regression analysis were undertaken in 3 steps in the study. We utilized MS Excel 365 spreadsheet for content analysis and IBM SPSS statistics 2526 together with the process macro 3.5.3 that were effectively used for multiple regression analysis. And here in this part, I'd like to summarize some of the results we have found out through our research questions and the surveys. First, we employed a reliability analysis technique for the evaluation of the reliability level. As shown in the table underneath, the overall results indicate a highly reliable degree for all of the response scales as a Cronbach alpha coefficient of 0.80 or higher appeared to be a robust measure of scale reliability and internal consistency. In terms of a difference in learning experience between CMC and FTF, 63 respondents referred to the final attribute and its frequency on yes in table 3 answered that interest in class as well as attitude in class is between the score range 3.15 and 3.24, while failing in class and understanding of class appeared 2.89 and 2.91 respectively. These outcomes imply the students could see a remarkable difference in CF1 and CF3, which is attitude, between the classes via CMC and FTF, given that CF1 and CF3 were scaled in between 3 and 4, whereas CF2 feeling as well as CF4 understanding was scaled toward 2, which could be said as weak. The inter-item reliability test uncovered that the mean average score of each independent variable with the high reliability in meta-ability states 3.21 through 3.62 for changes in MC ability, which is learning plan, knowledge management, problem recognition, and problem solving, and 2.81 through 3.04 for changes in MA ability, which is a sense of closeness, a sense of unity, a sense of trust, and a sense of respect, and 2.97 through 3.26 for changes in MS, which is mutual interaction, information processing, opinion exchanging, understanding of relation ability. In particular, all four variables in MC ability exceeded 3 in scale, reaching up to 3.62. Thus, we may report that MC ability changes via CMC were strongly identified from the respondent among 3 meta-ability elements. As for IR, which is social presence, social emotion, social identity, and social satisfaction, through the verbal, nonverbal CMC media, each reliability for the scale was highly satisfactory, and 6 inquiries, including all 4 nonverbal items related to the learner-teacher relationship via CMC, were next, we executed the bivariate correlations to measure how the variables between MC, MA, MS, and IR were in a linear relationship and compute Pearson's coefficient with their significance levels. Based on the results of correlation analysis, the variables with Pearson's only at the 0.01 level will be selected for the following regression analysis to draw the cause-effect conclusions in the conceptual framework. As a result, shown in the table below, the variables of MC1 and MC2 with 6 scores of IR were positively correlated, and the variables of MA1, MA3, and MA4 with the 4 of the IR scores appeared a positive correlation at the 2-tailed p-value respectively. Overall, these significant Pearson's coefficient stayed at the moderate low levels, however. In contrast, there was no significant linear relationship between any of the MS variables and all variables in IR, regardless of verbal, non-verbal. These results similarly corresponded to the outcomes of the previous content analysis using secondary data, showing that MC ability and MA ability were comparably higher in frequency than that of MS ability. In sum, we discovered a significant moderate low correlation between learners' changes in MC ability and MA ability and verbal, non-verbal IR with teachers via CMC from the sample students. Consequently, the hypothesis 3, learners' metasocial changes via CMC, affects the learner-teacher relationship is not supported. And in this very last part, I'd like to highlight some of the findings we have in our research and in this conclusion part. In response to improving learners' meta-ability and interpersonal relationship with teachers in higher education during the COVID-19 pandemic, our research explained the changes in meta-ability and a learner-teacher relationship and asks whether a full distance learning method without the face-to-face mode via CMC affects learners' metability, and changes in metability influences the learner-teacher relationship through the real-time teaching and not simultaneous in time. So our research examines the given hypothesis using quantitative analysis technique, including correlation and regression, providing a CMC-rooted new theoretical model, and collecting empirical data from a Korean university in December 2020 and June 2021. In conclusion, teaching through the CMC media higher education learners may enhance their metability, and learners and teachers can establish a close relationship with each other via both synchronous and asynchronous methods. Our key results then reveal that of three measurable components of a learner's metability, changes in metacognition and meta-affect mainly affect the interpersonal relationship with teachers, with an influence of learners' academic year that addresses face-to-face learning experience. This outcome that highlights a clear cause-effect relationship between the two constructs is different from the existing literature that the improvement of meta-ability as well as interpersonal relationship with teachers via CMC seems highly complicated to learners. In this sense, such an empirical fruit would be the significance of this study. In addition to the underlying explanation, our research summarizes several meaningful implications based on the findings. First, we identify a remarkable response to the difference in learning between CMC and face-to-face classes in terms of interest in class and attitude in class via CMC during the COVID-19 situation. Thus, a full online learning format can generate an education gap against face-to-face learning in the classroom in the aspect of drawing higher education learners' attention to the classes via CMC. Secondly, teachers should find ways to let their students not only plan a learning task by managing knowledge themselves and recognize learning issues, but also think of the direction of feelings and reflect on the links between the learner-teacher emotions via the CMC media. And third, both sides, learners and teachers, ought to consider making a social connection in educational dimensions between individuals in classroom or online by exchanging identity and emotion via verbal and non-verbal content. Hence, educators and policymakers will be interested in these implications. And also, there are multiple main limitations to our research. First, the size and range of the data sample was practically limited by collecting survey answers during the semester breaks into online from a single university. Secondly, this work theoretically focused on the view of learners to narrow down to the critical issue of the changeover to the online learning format, not that of teachers in higher education. Thirdly, our data analysis included only domestic students because of the very limited number of international students whose understanding was also highly poor in communicating online during the COVID-19. Lastly, by mapping out an initial theoretical model, we relied on a relatively simple research framework and quantitative data analysis technique. Therefore, further research would be required with more samples across the universities or two different survey manners in two groups for international and domestic. A separate research design from the teacher's perspective would be meaningful and insightful to fill the gap of the study. Finally, more advanced skills using path analysis and structured equation modeling for more complex dependent variables in the learner-teacher relationship other than a simplified single variable can provide further in-depth finding.